Yeah.
All right, and then on and I'm gonna just quiet this thing. It's live. Hopefully it's the right one. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Village of Wheat Falls humbly acknowledges that we are on the traditional lands of the Munsee, Esopus, and Lenape people. The Indian Removal Act of 1830 forced the people to relocate to inhospitable territory far from the bountiful valley and mountains we inhabit today. The village further acknowledges that much of the physical structure of our village and town was built by enslaved Africans who labored as the property of their owners until 1827 on this very land. We acknowledge and honor the contributions, resilience, and accomplishments of the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, who have overcome historic injustice to inform our past and inspire. The New Falls encourages everyone to learn more about the contributions and sacrifices made by the Indigenous people and enslaved Africans by visiting these sites. If you have resources that you should believe in should be included here, please contact us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I move to amend the consent agenda to include approval of a renewal of our calibration service contract with Process Automation Control Services for 1 year. The contract provides quarterly calibration services at $1,275 a quarter, and then to pass the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can I ask a question now?
Sure.
Without, I'll just say, will we have a report back on the business item that we did in executive session some time ago?
Yes. We will have that. Yeah.
I wanna make sure.
Yeah, I spoke to folks right before this meeting and we'll have updates for next meeting. Yeah. So I move to amend the business agenda to include approval of posting all pilot agreements that impact village taxpayers to the village website, and to further amend the business agenda to address the downtown preservation district item first, and then proceed in the order as it is, and then to adopt the business agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Announcements. Anyone else from the village? Do we have some announcements?
You're gonna do the heat stuff?
Yeah. So on the heat stuff and this month's potluck with family of New Paltz is actually canceled. But they are going to remain open until 8 p.m. tonight to serve as an additional cooling space, and county emergency management folks are going to be reassessing the heat wave and what needs there are for cooling spaces in the next 73 hours to see if we need spaces to remain open through the weekend. We have posted on the village website, and Hudson Valley One reposted that, and all of our social media, a list of different places that and their hours throughout the village that people can get cool at. And that's also a great way to find out more about what's going on at the community center and program and all of that too. So to be continued, and all that information can be found on our website. But tonight, if you're feeling it out there, family remains open until 8 for this. Next is, of course, America's birthday. So we have our July 4th community celebration. It's the first big fireworks since 2018. So that's taking place this Saturday, July 4th at the county fairgrounds here in New Paltz. Brand new pavement on Libertyville Road for that, which is exciting, I guess. Gates open at 5. There's live music all evening, fireworks at dusk. I believe it's a $5 admission, and the organizers, local at heart, are hoping people will bring non-perishable donations to help fill the bucket loader to help supply local food pantries with necessary items. The Margaret Wade Lewis Center for Black History and Culture is having their annual ice cream social at the Ann Oliver House on Saturday, July 11th from 1 to 3 p.m. That's at 5 Broadhead Ave. On Tuesday, July 27th at 7 o'clock p.m. right here during the regularly scheduled Landlord-Tenant Relations Council meeting, we will be having an information session about the home share program that has been so successful in Woodstock, with the organizers from Woodstock, to hopefully launch it here in New Paltz. And then I did want to share 2 updates to the community. I've been appointed to the Ulster County Human Rights Commission, thanks to the county minority leader, Kevin Roberts. And just want to share that the commission is working on like a big comprehensive human rights plan. And so in the coming weeks, I'll find out more about ways that I can help our community and be like a good commissioner, but just want people to know to use me as a resource in that way. Yeah, that's exciting. Thank you. I'm like, next week's gonna be a big week of meetings, fun ones. Not that this isn't fun. And then I've also been appointed to the County Zero Waste Committee, thanks to Marlborough Supervisor Rich Parity. So I'm there to represent municipal interests, from the supervisors and mayors association. And so, I'm working on a survey that I'll put out after the holiday weekend to other municipal leaders, and all of us too, about barriers to actually achieving zero waste goals, recycling, composting, and all of that, because, I've heard so much, I've witnessed so much, I've experienced so much frustration to this end myself, so excited to help with a similar, countywide comprehensive plan to do better on that end. All right, public comment, if anyone wants. I didn't print out a sign-in sheet, but you can just come on up if anyone wants. Okay. So let's just, we approved the consent agenda already, so business agenda, I moved the downtown historic preservation district item up, so I want to invite our HPC Chair Tom Olson, and if Sarah, if you want to come also, HPC Secretary, come on up to the table. This is so exciting. I did print some copies of the old resolution from 2022.
Yep.
And Ariana got that linked into the agenda, so it's in the minutes also, just because it could help us kind of move forward. And I figure I'm so glad we were able to catch you before summer plans get underway. Yeah.
I appreciate the invitation, and I promise not to be super long. I can give it to you after I present it, if you don't mind sharing. So first of all, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for moving me up a little bit in the agenda tonight. What I wanted to do was kind of summarize for everybody except Alex, who was actually on the board that approved the resolution that you now have in front of you. To give you a little context of why the ball got dropped, I'm just going to use that kind of general passive voice. There's no villain at all in this story, but there is some confusion about where we are, and I have a couple of suggestions to get us back on track. But if you don't mind, I'm going to spend like 3 to 5 minutes just drawing your attention to this first document. And kind of the takeaway here is the point that we got to in 2022 is the culmination of a conversation that goes back to at least 1980, and I probably could even take that back further. So like with pretty good regularity, the community has been aware that the downtown is a special part of the community, has proposed making it some kind of overlay district or preservation district since at least 1980, and that's come out of not only government initiatives, but also this Downtown Development Committee in 1991 came to the same conclusion, and that seems to have been extra-governmental, but obviously, full of stakeholders in the downtown area. So we have this, pretty consistent pattern, which I'll leave you to read or we can talk about, but there are many, many points at which the community is moving toward the thing that we tried to get done in 2022. And the date that I would really draw your attention to, 2 dates are 2008. We started working on this big fat 67-page document to have the downtown district landmarked nationally and at the state level. We got that through on the first try. That's a real honor I mean, there are lots of communities that don't have anything on the National Register. We've got both Huguenot Street and the downtown district. So in a sense, we fulfilled some of those wishes from the 80s and 90s by getting that through. The catch for those who don't know this, the catch is that the state and national register is purely honorific. There's no local control. So someone can own a property within that district, which has been recognized at the state and federal level, and tear down a building that we consider, sort of inherent to the identity of the community, massively change a building. And the only thing between that happening and not is the rules that the planning board works by, which are not really geared toward aesthetic appreciation or historical appreciation. And I said earlier, there are no villains. Like, it's not that the planning board doesn't do a good job. It's just not in their purview to ask that kind of question. And so from the point of designating the downtown district, which was approved in 2009, we immediately issued quite a nice brochure that some of you may have seen, or it's also up online, of just basic guidelines to guide people, because at that point, and still today, that's all the power we have, is to make a series of suggestions about how you mass buildings, what you do with replacement windows, doors, the sorts of things that happen in a dynamic downtown. So we immediately issued that brochure. It was sent out to all the property owners affected by the national and state districts. But that's kind of where it stopped. And then for a period of almost 10 years, we were sort of getting ourselves together, trying to move toward this designation, which again happened in 2022. The last item on the first side of the sheet is, at some point, the board on which Alex sat approved this resolution. I'm pretty sure it was unanimous, but I can't get into the archive. And I asked Ariana if she could, somebody would be able to find exactly what date it was approved and by what margin. But soon after that, if you remember what it was like in 2022, the village was overtaxed with COVID and post-COVID restrictions. It was really a bad time. And so Tim Rogers approached me basically with, I guess you'd call it a command. I mean, I didn't fight him on this. He said, it's just not the time to move this forward. We were a little unsure about what notification had to happen, in spite of a number of public hearings, a number of presentations to the board. We felt like we were doing everything openly and transparently. But then when it came down to it, we weren't sure if we had done everything that the state requires. And to this date, I'm not absolutely sure. I think we probably need legal advice on where we are. But the good news is that the previous board felt enthusiastic and strongly about this. I think the community does. And there are lots of benefits. I would just draw your attention to the other map. New York, the Office of Parks, Recreation and Historic Preservation pulls together opportunities for property owners, both commercial property and homeowners, for some tax credits. One of the most important things for those tax credits is to be either individually landmarked or in a landmark district. And state and national isn't the same thing as locally designated. So I think there are some, in addition to all the intangible benefits of an enjoyable downtown, a beautiful downtown, a downtown that out-of-towners want to come and see, there is potentially some advantage to people who want to work on their properties. And we hope, I mean, in order to get these, they would have to move them in a historically appropriate area or direction, excuse me. So what I would like to talk about tonight is what the next steps would be. And what I'm thinking would make sense is, from this board, some kind of ratification discussion, and I hope eventually ratification of what the board approved in 2022, given that it's something like 4 years later, just to kind of get that clear. And then I think the second move, if that first move happens, is to consult with the village attorney and really try to parse out what the language says, because what my reading tells me is it's extremely specific about individual property landmarking. So, Sarah owns a historic home and we individually work with her to landmark it and make it, I think it would be the 14th or so property that we've landmarked in the village. The code is very explicit about what we do. It's a little less clear what you do about a district. And so I would want to seek legal advice. I did take a first step and I contacted the State Office of Parks, Recreation and Historic Preservation with that question. And they basically said, do what's in your code. She thought it was a good idea to have a ratification vote by this board, but in terms of like the legal steps and for notification and the hearing, she said, we don't impose anything. It's whatever your code says. And I find the code a little bit unclear.
Yeah.
So that's where I am. I'm grateful, Alex, that you see the importance of this and kind of got back to me, because we honestly had kind of let it slip here.
Yeah, thank you so much for your help with this, Stephanie. And I think that's a good, like, bunch of steps. I think this is really important, especially, considering the timing. Like, if we were to consolidate, we wouldn't have a board of 5 village people to work on this kind of thing, for our.
Down to 4 as of today. Would you, the lead singer for the village people.
Oh, right.
Today,
Oh,
sorry,
gosh.
maybe.
Oh,
But he'd also
recreation.
left the village people, it turns out. So,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
oh, gosh, that was good. Yeah, I think Pride Month's over, it's July now. So, yeah, no, but like, I think now is the time to do this, and just a lot of concerns, like the consolidation question that people expressed to me is, losing the downtown historic character, which, can happen either way, like if you don't have these protections. And I was working in the Senate when Senator Hinchey had worked to pass the historic barn tax credit, and so that's been kind of on my mind too. Like, I can't go anywhere in the region without seeing a barn and being like, they should call the senator,
Yeah.
and see what kind of help they can get. So, I spoke with folks in our clerk's office, and like, regardless what the, notification requirements wind up being, like, I'm going to suggest we do a little bit of like airing above and beyond, because people do actually like getting mail that isn't just a bill from us.
Right.
And so once we're past like audit season, that's something that wouldn't be too heavy of a lift. And this body was also interested in including newsletters and water bills. So maybe such a notification, of the entire district would be an opportunity to do such, a newsletter, update outside of the water bill, perhaps. So, it's a different time than 2022. So that end, we can definitely err on over informing versus not, because the code is pretty more general. And I thought it was interesting how SHPO was like, not sure what registered is. I'm like, that's just USPS, but we'll definitely get our union attorney Will's take on all these things a little bit further. And I've just made a note for myself to also just double check with our folks at NICOM, because they're a good resource.
Yeah.
Just to get clarity on the next steps. We have that old resolution. I think it would make sense to have the HPC just make sure you guys also ratify, I think, maybe at a next meeting, like what you want to have us consider. So whenever that happens, and even if it is literally the same resolution, I'm a-okay with that. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. But I think for us to ratify a previously, adopted resolution, it would just feel good for the bringers of the resolution to do the same. Yeah, but did anyone here have any questions while we have Professor Olson and Sarah here?
No questions. I love this stuff so much, and I like, we're still gonna include words in full length of Main Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I could just speak to something that Sarah said, if there is some kind of consolidation of somehow more shared services, the village the downtown part of the village becomes ever more distinct. One of the things that we kind of struggled with is where do you draw the line in the village? Like, why isn't Prospect in this? There are some reasons a Prospect could be, but we also felt like, you know, the bigger it gets, the bigger the workload for a 5-person committee. But if the community combines, then I would say like categorically, the downtown looks a lot different from the more rural parts of the downtown. So I really endorse what you said. So I think almost regardless, but if there's
Yeah.
some kind of consolidation, the downtown core really is going to look different from the rest of the community.
Yeah, definitely.
Alex, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just to understand what the implications would be, if we were to pass and this would become part of our way of working. Would every house that's located in the district be subject to it, or only those houses that are historic and registered in the way that you described your one?
No, it's everything. And there's a precedent on Huguenot Street. So the whole of Huguenot Street up to the town line
Yeah.
is the preservation district. But we treat, you know, a 1980s vinyl sided house at the northern end very differently from one of the stone houses on
So
Huguenot.
that just becomes discretion.
It does, yeah.
But
And
the discretion could also go the other direction, where you could force that vinyl house to become a cedar sided house.
no, never. I mean, first of all, there's never any forcing, like even with the stone house, we don't tell them it should look like this. Everything's triggered by an application. So the person in the house wants to do an extension, let's say. That extension is going to have to be sided with something. And there are examples, there are sad examples in the village where siding A is not the same as siding B. And, you know, that's the sort of thing we would talk about with somebody in a vinyl sided house on Huguenot Street or in a new district is, you know, the village shouldn't have to endure those bad decisions when somebody's doing work like that. Windows that are mismatched, because these were available at Lowe's for 20% off. So I think that I think that's bigger than New Paltz. I think that any historic district means everything within the district, but we always treat things appropriate to their age and importance.
And the reason I asked that question is one of the things I'm thoughtful about is, you know, I'm serving as a planning board. There are times when recommendations the planning board makes or that the historic president has made, you know, through the board, where there might be real significant cost implications to that homeowner that might make that repair or that condition or something else, you know, unaffordable because of the recommendation or less affordable. And so while I'm totally in favor of what we're describing here, I always just want to raise the idea that things like this could be really great for people who can afford to uphold these types of standards, but they can be really harmful to people that can't, that already own their home and want to care for it.
There's definitely an issue of the public good versus the private interest. You know, the idea being that, you know, if you're preserving the authenticity of a neighborhood for everyone, that's great. The individual may have to, it may be harmful to the individual property owner. So there's definitely a push and pull there sometimes.
There is, I mean, you know, and I think there is in a lot of regards. I mean, I think even basic zoning in some ways is a version of that. I desperately want a pig farm on Prospect Street and neighbors don't want a pig farm on Prospect Street. I do think that one of the things that I might add to Alan's comment is like for like replacement. So the situation where somebody just needs to fix something. Anything that is like for like doesn't even really need an application. We usually end up in some kind of conversation to determine whether it's really like for like. And then the other thing is, you know, in those situations where somebody wants an extension, I think there's more obligation to do it in a way that's sensitive to the community because it's an elective act, right? You're laying down a budget to do something anyway. There's a very nice example of a modern vinyl sided house on Huguenot Street. I guess I can even say at the corner of Henry Court, where the applicants did something that's absolutely seamless, and that was after a couple of iterations with us, just kind of tweaking the design and, making, totally modern elective addition just look right, just look really good and impose no hardship on neighbors.
Two other thoughts about this was, one is that if the district is established, then people who buy into that district, maybe they don't know, but they can know that there would be that consequence to addition, so they would know that ahead of time. That's not true for existing homeowners or property owners. The other question I have, Tom, is do you know if those state tax credits and stuff like that apply to just renovation work or also additions?
I think I'd be guessing.
Yeah,
It's deep in, I will say one thing, it's not really an answer to that, but they're not ungenerous.
Mm.
And in fact, a lot of the money can even go to the bar for exterior is pretty low. I mean, a lot, if you're planning, let's say $100,000 renovation, in some cases, 95,000 of that can be interior as long as five. But I just don't know if extensions.
Right. We looked at this a little bit at the lemon squeeze where
Mm.
there was an issue of like, there was a timing thing though, because you had to plug in all your drawings in. Anyway,
Yeah,
it's a little involved. It'd be great to know about that, so that if anybody had any questions about, the pros and cons of like, how does this affect me as a homeowner? If somebody on Huguenot Street or whatever, or in the new district,
well,
because we can answer those questions.
yeah, I think it's just a matter of reading a little more deeply into it than I did for this meeting. But I just, also on your first point, we, whenever we're aware, we proactively inform interested parties about landmarking. There's two cases come to mind immediately. There's an individually landmarked house that was on the market recently. Realtor, I think, referred a potential client to us just to find out what the process was. They had some ideas in there. And we were really happy. It really never got no further than myself. I said, here's how it works. Here's what we would favor. It had to do with placement of mini split units. And we said, look, just put them here or here and we'll be fine. So that's example one. Example two was just last week. There's a pretty significant property for sale on Huguenot Street. I reached out to the listing broker to say, please let your clients know what they're buying into. And they should anyway. That's the due process and doing your diligence. But it never hurts to reach out. And we've, in that same property, have sent letters to new owners as soon as we find out. Just saying,
Right, that's great.
yeah,
That's great. Great work.
thank you.
Yeah, anything else? I think, so I feel like we're pretty clear on some next steps, HPC can ratify or revise and vote on a similar resolution of recommendations. As soon as you get that our way, we'll get on our next agenda to address, we'll work with Will and NICOM, and some other contacts just to make sure we know what kind of notifications absolutely are required and what we can do within that, like the language that has to be used. And we'll have to do, I think we'll have to still do a public hearing again, which
Yeah,
is totally fine, like,
Totally fine with me too.
I like anything that's just more notification than less, and that way there's no question about us doing this completely correctly. So I'll get the public hearing notice prepped as soon as we get that resolution ready, so we can kind of like look at it all, and if everyone's comfortable, set the public hearing at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds great. In fact, I might have a document that would help because I did recover the announcement of that previous, that 2022 public hearing. So
It was a virtual public hearing.
yeah, it was COVID.
I was
We
like-
just weren't meeting
wild, yeah.
Nobody wants to go back to those days.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you. I think we can get this done. I think it'll be really good, you know, I've been learning a lot more, like, was always interested about like a lot of our historic buildings and stuff, but getting to be in this seat, you know, you get to hear more stories about change that happens like fast, you know, especially on Main Street, you know, hearing stories like when I'm like, why is that parking lot like that, you know, and just it's heartbreaking, to be honest, you know, I almost cried over a few recent coffees with constituents and local architects who are just sharing, you know, stories of what they've seen, and if we can do better for the future and for all of us, then let's do it.
I agree. And, you know, there, I won't mention any of them, but, you know, you go to other communities, you just see like that community is thrown in the towel. They just, you know, guardrails at all.
Yeah.
So,
I'll also just reconnect with, you know, my friends in the Senate, to see if they have any additional info about tax breaks and whatnot for historic districts.
Sure, yeah.
So we can get like kind of like a running list together to provide that information too.
One last comment is, sometimes the economics in a town shift come somewhat rapidly, or they, you know, that could happen in New Paltz, and at that point, the money that could come in to make changes without regard to the historic nature of things or the history of the town, well, I guess it's the same thing, but the sort of urban fabric that means so much to all of us it could be a much more powerful force, and it'd be great to have some you know, institutional bulwark against that. Yeah, because if we don't have it and it comes in and then all of a sudden things are changing and we're like, well, we need a law. Well, it's gonna take 8 months or a year. The application's already in and all things are happening, and
Right,
you know, so I did really think it's great that you're pursuing this and it's gonna happen.
thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, great. This sounds great. I would like to think that we might be able to ratify this at our next meeting, which is 13th.
Awesome.
Just around the corner.
Yeah, so I'll queue this up for the next agenda on the 15th, you know, that way we at least have a continued conversation, drafts to look at, and hopefully complete things to look at and vote on, yeah.
That sounds really good.
Thank you
Yeah.
both for your service. And it's really
Well,
next.
to you all too, the village is their service than we provide, but we've got our little piece of,
Yay, thank you.
thanks.
All right.
Thanks very much. See you soon.
Okay, that's exciting. So village and town consolidation standing agenda item. Yeah,
Did anybody else read that letter and that letter from the lawyer and the attorney, sort of stating is like seems very thoughtful, but also this kind of obscure text about what the legalities are of consolidation and carrying over one union to the next union and all that all works. And it gave me some hope about that, but it also made me a little bit like, oh, well, this is a little bit what he said, uncharted waters to some extent. And I'm just curious to see how other people, Tim and, you know, other people, you know, sort of come down on, no, this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. Because I don't understand that yet. You know, but that letter was really interesting. It was interesting, and his kind of summary was really interesting.
I mean, I think ultimately it's up to the unions to negotiate what happens, and
Right.
that's kind of what is uncomfortable about all this. There's no true guarantee, it's not up to us.
It
We can make
almost-
the decisions.
And it seemed, right, it seemed like what I was hearing was that there was gonna be some pre-negotiation. And that was gonna be, just some determination was gonna be made at the town level with the town union before.
Contingent on that.
And then they were gonna agree to something, and then that was gonna put in place this security for the village. And what I read from that document was that if nobody says anything, then the village can kind of keep its own union, or as a distinct employee group, which was what I think Tim was shooting for, was that the village employees do a very distinct thing for the village, I guess, for certain tasks, and that sewer and water and stuff like that. And therefore they could maintain a distinct union from the town union and therefore maintain their current status line.
Yeah, so the issue there is there are repeats in civil service titles despite.
Right,
the-
right, right,
the-
right.
Despite the spreading of roles out, and just what happens with any organization over time too, where it's, like one person really becomes the expert on, one thing and so on. And so even if we have even explored, or I guess like when I say we, before I got in on those conversations, so like last year, it was explored, the idea of doing just like water sewer unit. And then moving our people over into that, and I guess there were issues with that because there still are the repeat civil service titles. So. Yeah, you can't do that, so the fact of the matter is, and then, okay, so. I'm so much more comfortable talking about housing law, like, that's like what I know in and out, right? And there is an analogy here, because so much when it comes to tenants' rights, it's so similar with, union members' rights. Where a lot, like, especially when you get into uncharted territory, a lot of it comes down to what her rules, if a case gets to them, so with tenants' rights, these things are on the books, but they don't really get enforced because there's no local interior enforcing mechanism. It's just like, this is my right, and if we're gonna get, butt heads on it, it's gonna go to this judge who will then rule, right? So Curb is kind of like the judge. And so that was kind of a bit of what was in that, legal memo from last year too. And that's kind of like the notes I wrote for tonight too, is like, just really, a lot of this is uncharted waters. We can't chart those waters like in advance of doing it, like the agreement has everything in it that New York State law says it has to have. And it can't do the union negotiation part, like that is up to the unions. And so then it becomes about trust. So,
Trust in whom?
yeah, so I guess trust in us to, do what we can, like on, in advance of potential consolidation, trust in, I would say, the town board to demonstrate that good faith, by, in ways that Tim is doing, I think, in making sure that his, like, on Monday morning has to make sure is the correct, village CBA to make sure the town folks have a copy of ours so that they can enter their negotiations if they would like to with our better agreement, and whatnot. So that's one way. I have a meeting scheduled with Will and, some of our DPW folks and CSEA, and have Tim coming. And Stevie, I'm making you take notes at it. Okay, sorry. Like to do more of that, good faith, like we're all doing this together, but, yeah, it really does come down to a lot of trust about a body that isn't even ours,
Yeah, isn't it only that there has to be some trust among the village and town employees? Kind of that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
It's like, but is there that trust? I mean, yeah. Yeah, so, and there's more village town employees than there are village employees, so ultimately the majority rules. But
Yeah. Yeah, and there's so much more at play too, when you think about just the different folks who represent union members, it's their job also to be, just fighting for the best deal for their folks. That's literally the job definition. And like, I've applied to jobs like that before, and like, that was the job definition. And that creates a potentially, combative situation too, because it's like, you go in saying, swinging like at the last, joint meeting saying like, but like, they don't want to be in that union with those guys, so that creates a whole thing, right? So it's a really tough landscape to navigate. I think we're doing all that we can. And I think that like is what's important to kind of get out there to the public too, is like the question of consolidation on the ballot is gonna be, do we wanna get rid of the village, yes or no? The JCA can be updated at any point in the process, even after a vote. If, you know, throughout the whole process, and it's a roadmap, you know, for another body that isn't us to follow, you know, and like, that's really all there is to it. And like, if people are comfortable with that and wanna like, you know, change the way New Paltz is governed and make it one government, then they should vote yes. If people are concerned about these other nuances and aren't sure about that kind of, it's a long-term plan, it's a long game, you know? And so there's going to be discomfort there that I don't know if we can really address. You know? It's just, I don't think it was ever going to be a clean process. But we're doing the best we can. And it'll, I think, be good to get this question like on the ballot, just to settle debates that have been going on for decades, you know? That said, it's not healthy for our staff to be so anxious, you know?
Right.
Yeah, I guess my only other update is, so on the housing law end of things, obviously we have like way more tenant protections on the books. We achieved gold status as a housing smart community. You know, that's basically what I did for the past 6 years, mainly was be our housing smart task force coordinator and, you know, helping really push forward all those like laws that really like protect tenants, and landlords in a really good way. And the town just doesn't have comparable laws to that end. And like, you know, in previous, like last year, like, it was like, yeah, just get the town to adopt the same as laws in advance, and it kind of addresses that issue. So Tim has me putting good cause eviction on the next joint agenda again, but that's the town has to pass it, so we'll see how that plays out. I had a really good meeting with a bunch of housing advocates from the town's Housing Smart Task Force, from UAC's housing group, and then from each of our housing related boards, landlord tenant relations, affordable housing. Yeah, and basically we started plotting out next steps, and it was a good conversation, I think. Because it was interesting, folks on the town task force didn't even know some of the laws that we have, you know, didn't even know we have had this landlord tenant council forever, that we actually have a stronger security deposit law than New York State does, because we have home rule, ours is still on the books, the part that is stronger, where you get treble damages, you know, you only get 2 damages or something if you live outside the village, right? We have good cause eviction, we have like, we just have so many different levels of recourse and whatnot, so I think that was really good. I think it's going to be the beginning of more check-ins kind of, rather than just putting forth at a joint meeting, a new resolution for us to do a combined housing smart task force. I don't think the folks from all those groups are really comfortable just like combining forces yet, without kind of coming up with a whole structure. And also there's, I guess, a bit of grant money that can be available to us because we achieved this gold standard. And there's so many, so I've been talking with the lead county planner with the Housing Smart program, Kai, about implementing a rental arrears. Well, like how do you stretch out this tiny little bit of money for as long as humanly possible to help as many people? A rental arrears assistance, like one-shot deal like New York City has. I know that would have saved my life a few times over, and a lot of cases that come to me for help. If they just had like that $400 check to stay in place, it would solve everything, you know? So I will do more work on that end and see about that, but, that's why I'm not doing that joint resolution just yet, because I don't want us to lose our village housing smart task force and then lose that money somehow. So that's my update.
Thank you.
And did I also hear you, Chair Alex, that it's possible that we could at least propose the town board, beginning as soon as we'd like, certain laws that they might consider that would mirror some of the laws that we have in place to, I mean, I think in some ways, you talk about building trust, I think in some ways that would be a demonstration of trust, would be a bit of listeners. To see whether it's likely that things that are important to the village will prevail in a consolidated town.
Yeah,
And so at least initiating a conversation, I think we could have a pretty good sense that, you know, there's a couple topics that matter to us. Let's put those on the table and see if these are, you know, these are directions that the town board would be willing to go even before the vote to demonstrate that that's their intent. You know, if that's the direction they intend to go.
yeah, exactly. And so, you know, I think that's basically the idea, you know, because we had already kind of started at a previous joint meeting where it was like good cause eviction, and I'm like, here, you guys have questions, we've gone through it all, Tim knows it by heart also. But 100%, like, what I'm hearing from housing advocates is like, they feel very similarly to the way a lot of our staff feel, where they want to see a little action now, rather than like hopes and prayers that all village tenant laws and, you know, our AU law and like things that make building AUs and housing for tenants easier and protect people will just be adopted all at large. Like, let's see what happens now, like show us a little effort. So I like your idea of like using that good cause eviction agenda item as a way to kind of put forth like the whole list, you know. We have a good list in our resolution from 2022 when we joined in with the Housing Smart Task Force, so we can kind of like re-up that as like just like village pro housing and tenant landlord wish lists for
The
all new
opportunity
folks.
for members of the town board to be on record. In
Yeah.
terms of their position, it could be a really important thing to point to when, you know, community members are trying to decide how to vote.
Yeah,
It's, and in speaking to that prior issue around the labor agreement, you know, I think I heard from Tim that they were willing to begin conversations with both unions, even as soon as now, to try to get some, you know, early considerations on the table, maybe get two groups working together. It sounds like that already began. I think that's another example of a situation where it's a little more than hopes and prayers and even trust. It's a little bit more like reality that there's a clear commitment that the things that are great about our village will persist as things that would be even better about our town, because they would apply to an even larger group of people in a larger geography that would benefit from what we really care about. So I think that the more we can kind of push into the agenda where we're asking people to, you know, to commit in a way, could be really great, even if it's not a vote, it's a record.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah, that's awesome.
And I appreciate you pulling together, you know, what that housing, for instance, the example of that housing list might look like these are 6 things that we think would be really important to sustain. But these things that you're committed to, that is consolidated need.
Yeah. And it like, it really would. It would make, let's say consolidation were to like come to pass, it would make that whole transition period go so much more smoothly if legwork had been done to adopt some of these, you know, some of these laws. Because there's a very it's a huge task, that transition, you know, like, that's why that JCA was such a big, large document, you know? And so much of it is going to come down to, just like everything else we do in local government, you know, who steps up to the plate in that moment, you know? And shepherds, you know, the goals of the JCA, like, through to fruition, like, rather than, you know, saying, well, look at adopting all these housing laws, just do it now, you know? Do it now while I can help, you know? Cool, yeah, so we definitely, Tim already wants good cause eviction on the next joint agenda, so, I'll follow up and ask if he'd be into making it into like a whole pro tenant combo, yeah, thank you. Anything else on consolidation for now? Oh, I know, we'll have a good weekend and then, we'll do the lawyer convo Monday. I'll report back to everyone, you know, from that. And then Tuesday is the first public hearing. Tuesday, 6 p.m. at the middle school. And then everyone can find all the information on the website about everything future forward.
Yes.
Oh, right, same stuff. So next up, I move to just update the village sexual harassment training policy to include all volunteers on all boards, committees, commissions, and village related entities, including our fire department and its auxiliary. If you volunteer work with the village, this includes you.
Yes, I think that's the law, isn't
It is, but
it? State.
I guess there's some confusion about which groups that are like kind of like ad hoc or auxiliary and all that, so I wanna really get it out there, you know, I'm even making my boyfriend take the thing because he's my assistant, you know? So yeah, go ahead. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, awesome. I used to have to take the in-person ones at the Senate, so it's so much easier here. It's remote. You don't have to be in an auditorium with
If you
500
work in
other
another
people.
place that certifies you, you can submit that
Yep.
certificate to the village and they will certify.
Yep. Okay, so some quick bicycle pedestrian updates. The resolution requesting village-wide 25 mph. I didn't get to finish because I'm like trying to read through every other resolution that we've done in the past, and I'm like, I thought we did 5 of those. So to be continued on that. But at least we have the idea out there on an agenda, and we'll just kind of keep it on there. I wanted to propose the ideas of removing 2 parking spots on Main Street that our bicycle pedestrian committee is very passionate about them being actually like really problematic because some bad run-ins that keep coming my way. So in front of B-side and then in front of La Charla, there's just 2 spots where, it was a good idea to put parking there, but people are parking large vehicles. You know what I'm talking about.
Exactly what you do
Yeah,
on both sides.
yeah, and in those 2 spots, there just isn't enough room for like a regular sized vehicle. And so I spoke to our attorney and like, so removing spots, doesn't take like a passing of a local law. It's, you know, a motion at the table. But I do have to do more work to find out what we could do if we could create parklets in those spots, because it would be nice.
Word parking.
Yeah, so a parklet, what?
Just a smaller spot.
No, a parklet is taking a parking spot and making it into not a place for a car to park.
Just at all.
Like for like, you know, other places have popularized this word in a totally different way. To make it like dining on the street. That's not what I'm proposing. I'm proposing getting rid of just the parking meter in those spots, but keeping the spot marked off and figuring out like a way, it's a state highway, so we can't paint it pretty, without them getting mad at us, but putting like a planter, you know, a bench, stuff like that, making it just a space that's blocked off. Maybe we can have a bicycle parking spot at one of our.
Yeah, something like that.
That would be so cool, especially like, we don't have anything kind of further up the stretch as far as like good spots to park a bike.
Yeah.
So I'm looking into the rules around that for the future, and, I think I would like us to vote to remove those two spots when we have the plan of action, because it's a state highway, so I don't want us to remove the parking meters and then not be able to just do a quick remove the parking meter, now it's a parklet. So if you're all okay with this being like a stay tuned for next time thing, cool. Now you're gonna see the word parklet everywhere you go.
That's what they're doing up on Kingston, where they put like the little kids outside and the little. Just, yeah.
Yeah, and really just, the reason I like that idea for those spots is because the issue for bicycle pedestrian folks has been when people are parking there, the visibility becomes like really scary. You, like, yeah, and it would be nice to kind of like still have a way to create that space. Like I like it when those parking spots are empty because it feels safer, but I don't want them to just like disappear altogether, and we need more third spaces, blah, 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 so to be continued. And, oh yeah, and we sent off our resolution to the state DOT, and, just wanted to share that, you know, the new, leadership at our local DOT office, they've been so responsive, so when people send me complaints by email, I just forward them. I don't always respond to the person right away, but I just forward them off, and like today I got a couple of responses about some problem areas on the Empire State Trail and stuff. So just shout out to our DOT reps for hearing us.
If you have a person who's listening there, you know, there was an issue that, I know this isn't on the agenda, but if I may share. There's an issue with when we were in the process of approving the development of the new buildings in the ABR. There was pretty much a decision process that was predicated on the assumption that we were going to succeed in getting them to lower the speed limit where it currently drops to 40 all the way immediately to 30. And if I understand correctly, that was not approved.
That was not approved.
They needed a study to back it, but we had one previously.
Yeah, and well, the study will be, you know, a kid getting hit by a bus waiting for a school bus or something like that. Like we'll have some accident that will happen that will draw the attention, and then everybody will want to do it. But if you have someone who's willing to listen, maybe just kind of like be thoughtful about what we're trying to achieve in that particular location. It
Yeah,
would be great to restart that conversation immediately. Just say, okay, you said no, we're gonna come right back and ask you to do it, because you know, those buildings are coming online, and
Yeah.
that corridors needs to be as safe as possible.
yeah, that was one of the spots in our conversation with DOT reps, a month and a half ago. And, you know, it's like, it's crazy how like these studies they do, it's like, it's very hard to stay like calm and composed, because it's like, what do you want? Like me to like get hit, you know, like, because the studies are so based on that car-centric way of planning, which is just not working, you know?
The demographic that's in that building now, though, I think is the most important piece.
That should be
Yeah,
considered.
but it's so close to the road.
Yeah, so one thing they said to me in that meeting that really stuck was a big part of these studies is if someone can drive X amount fast, they can't just make it X amount not fast on these highway roads, because people are still gonna drive that fast. Which I'm like, okay, so I will go out and slow it down, like,
Yeah, be an example.
Yeah,
Right? And
I know.
because you can injure someone, you're not allowed to.
Right.
And that's a
I
ridiculous.
leave the potential.
Yes,
Yeah, it's a great idea. On so many levels, your safety is an issue. You're reinforcing the nature of that part of town. You're creating a better walking environment, you know, which is like what we're trying to do in the village, is
Yes.
trying to have a walking village.
Right.
And having a walking village means you have less traffic. You know, you have less traffic, less pollution, less wear and tear, and just less noise. It's just better all around. So.
yeah,
It's,
yeah, to be continued, the fight continues, but I do feel like they are more responsive than I felt in the past, and looking through old mayor emails, like, it definitely is the case. So, hey, I'll keep using that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I move to, appoint Caitlin Sumner to fill the position of planning board and zoning board of appeals secretary effective July 13th, 2026. The hours shall be set at 24 hours per week, plus any planning or zoning board meeting hours at a rate of $24 per hour. The position will report to the director of planning, zoning, and code enforcement.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. And I move to increase the regular work week hours for Richard Dreo, municipal code officer / building inspector 1, from 20 hours per week to 24 hours per week, effective immediately.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move our resolution for bills and claims.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any PV report?
I don't have a report from the planning board this week.
Okay.
It was a week and a half ago, and it's just.
No worries. Any ZBA?
And they didn't meet last time.
Right. And we didn't get our building planning zoning report yet, so I'm working on figuring out how to get us back up to speed on those awesome reports for the future, so stay tuned. Anything else? All right, let's go soccer, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, so moved.
There you go.
Aye.
Oh, that's all right.
If there's no one, I don't know.
Not too long, not like.